And there's breaking news that's coming in. Big breaking news coming in from Europe, and now Russian President Putin has threatened to stop energy supply to the European market. He said EU countries plan to impose additional restrictions on Russian LNG and energy. He said, I've instructed the government to evaluate the possibility of stopping energy supplies to the European market without waiting for the door to be shut in our face. This is the big breaking news that's coming in as Putin has threatened to stop energy supplies to Europe. This is the big news that's coming in. As this is a threat coming in, we're also going to be getting you the guests on the story. Let me also go across to our guest, Major Samarpal Toor, who's also joining us. Major Samarpal Toor, this is the news that we're getting, and we've already seen the looming energy crisis that has, of course, been started with President Trump at the very core of it, and now Putin is also threatening to stop energy supply. How are you looking at the ramifications of this for the world?
Russia is going to send in a message so that the pressure on Trump is put by the Europeans for stopping this war. Because until and unless the energy is being supplied to the Europeans, everything is going to be coordinated, and attacks against Iran are going to continue. So only to ensure that Trump feels the heat, President Putin has taken this immediate alternative that the natural gas that has been going on through the Turk Stream pipeline from Russia to Europe needs to be stopped immediately, because the European Union had already threatened Russia that by late 2026, 2027, they will stop taking the liquid natural gas from the Russians. So as a result, looking at this immediate Iran crisis which has happened, I think it will be an impactful move if Russia immediately stops the supply of the liquid natural gas. And by that, you see, the pressure will mount automatically onto the Americans as to how now the energy requirements of the European Union will be fulfilled by whom? Who's the seller now? Because you see, Iran has played things very smartly. Iran took a call that if my oil is not market, Iran ensured that nobody else's oil will also be available, will not be available to the West and to the Americans. And that is one of the major reasons why it has targeted the GCC countries, commercial hubs which were producing and exporting oil. So this is a clear-cut message to the Americans that their hegemony and their dominance will not be in effect. And I think Russia has played a master stroke by immediately planning to stop the supply of energy to Europe. Probably only then the Europeans and the NATO countries can put pressure on America to stop the Iran war immediately, and so that the supply of oil and liquid natural gas is replenished immediately to everybody. Else, everyone is going to be in the lurch. Nobody is going to be in a win-win situation over here. And, Americans will be at the receiving end. Moreover, the GCC countries have actually been having meetings not to go to war with one another. Reason being, Qatar has called out the Americans, saying that the Americans will move out of the war once the Gulf coordinating countries come into this war, and eventually Americans will land up selling their weapons to all the sides, and they will mint money, and there will be a Sunni Shia conflict which will accommodate the Israel Middle East corridor. So you see, the Arabs are not going to be fooled anymore, and the total onus has been put on the Americans. And I certainly feel America is not going to do the blunder by prolonging this war any longer. And there will be a ceasefire in the coming 10 days, and it will be initiated by the Americans itself. It is not going to be the Iranians, because the Iranians have already made their mind very clear that last two negotiations, they were, the moment they agreed for IAEA to visit their site of nuclear energy and the nuclear reactors, the very next day the 12-day war happened. Even here, they agreed on the 26th of February. On the 28th of Feb, the bombing began. So Iranians have realized that this is just a buying time tactic by the Americans, and they are not going to fall for it. And perhaps this is what the ending stalemate is going to be. So coming days are going to be very critical in terms of the oil prices, which are already on the rise.
Agree with you, but I also believe that, this is also happening, Major Samar Paltur, because very, very quietly, Europe has been going against Putin. We've seen how Europe had slashed the Russian pipeline gas by 80% since 2022. They had switched to the US Qatar LNG. Now Russia surviving, and they had got a lot of support from India. We became its #1 oil buyer. This is not an empty threat that Vladimir Putin is trying to give to Europe, but a clear indication from him: you didn't stand with us in support, and therefore I'm not going to be standing up for you.
I mean, this is exactly a message that he's trying to convey to the West, that, by pressurizing India and, India actually reducing the quantity of oil, not that we have completely stopped buying oil from Russia, but there's been a drastic fall in the quantity of the oil import from Russia. Because of that, the Russians were not very happy with things. And now that the Americans, the so-called controversial statement that they are allowing, they are giving permission to India to actually purchase this oil from the Russia for 30 days, which is already afloat in oil tankers. Well, firstly, India has made it clear they don't need permission. Number two, yes, we have felt the brunt in change of decision, and the oil that we were buying earlier from Russia is now $5 more expensive. However, overall, it is comparatively much cheaper compared to the countries which are procuring oil from Russia on those rates. So I certainly feel that India is treading a very tightrope. It has to be very careful in terms of its statements, what it is saying, and moreover, I feel that Prime Minister Modi should play a critical role in brokering for the peace talks and halting this war, and by initiating a dialogue between Israel and Iran. However, the Americans are still, they cannot be trusted at this moment. They have been very tough on all other nations, including India. So I certainly feel that we are definitely going to stay an arm's distance away from the Americans. However, Israel is our ally, and we have to comply with what they are, strategizing and what they have in the future as per their plan. But as far as the war is concerned, it needs to stop, because ultimately, no matter what, the loss is going to be on both the sides, the West and the Gulf, and those countries which are procuring oil. Because once the oil refineries are going to be completely cut, the pinch is going to be felt all around the globe. And the main country which is going to be blamed for initiating this war and not being decisive in terms of its outcome is going to be the Americans.
Yes.
So they are going to be they are going to face a lot of difficulties.
Yes. And I think that's going to be the final picture, how we're going to look at this war in Iran, but also a very strong warning, once again, Major Samar Paltur, to Donald Trump, the US president himself, who's now trying to see the world as his personal fiefdom. I thank you for joining us on that breaking news. There is more updates, more breaking news coming in on this bulletin. The Supreme Court, top court of the country,